Hi again then guys, and welcome to another look back down memory lane to the first Test Drive Unlimited game. And as you could see from the title and from the thumb, this is not just another car review, it's a very special day. In fact, as sad as it may seem, this is a day which I've been waiting for about 11 years. Because that is precisely how long it's been since I last drove these DLC vehicles in Test Drive Unlimited, and a couple of days ago, as many of you will have seen on the community tab of the channel, I finally managed to re-access all but one of the DLC packs in the game. Now, unfortunately, and of course Murphy's Law dictates, that the only car that I really wanted to drive the absolute most is the one that I couldn't download, the Cadillac 16, which is just typical. Of course, DLC pack number 6, along with the Audi A4 touring car and a couple of others, so that one's disappointing. However, I successfully re-downloaded everything else, and if those of you who are interested in knowing how would like a tutorial on that, I might actually do one, so tell me down below if that is something you'd like to see. But of course, what better way to get back into the groove of these DLC vehicles than with arguably the most unicorn-level vehicle in the entire game, the B Engineering Edonis, a car which I've talked about a couple of times on the channel, but not within the world of games, and there's a good reason for that. It's barely in any games. In fact, apart from Test Drive Unlimited, I've personally never driven it in any other game. Now, I'm sure it pops up as some kind of mod here and there, or maybe some mobile game, but Test Drive Unlimited was the very first, and for me last time, that I saw and experienced an Edonis in all of its glory. And I love the fact that they treat the car with so much respect as well. Now, of course, when I'm reviewing these DLC cars, it doesn't really apply in the same way that a normal car review in the game would. Because for a lot of people, you won't be able to buy this car anyway unless you already had the DLC back in the day. So with that in mind, this is kind of like the Drive Club videos to some degree. It's more of a time to reminisce, to walk down memory lane and check out some of these unicorn cars and unicorn bikes from Test Drive Unlimited 1. And to me, this was always one of my absolute favourites. In fact, as far as the DLC vehicles went, it was my top 3. The Edonis, the Cadillac Cian, and the Cadillac 16. And 2 out of 3 of those I've managed to get back, and thankfully the Cadillac Cian is an absolute beast as well. Now, speaking of a beast, for those who don't know, the Edonis is just that. It's one of the rarest and most exclusive supercars ever built. B Engineering actually refers to Bugatti engineering, because the story behind the car is a fascinating one, and even though I'm not going to get into it fully in this video, the basics of what you need to know is that in the 90s, Bugatti went bust after the EB110. Of course, this was before Volkswagen brought back the Veyron, and basically a few engineers and team members were left over, and they decided to use some of the carbon fibre tubs and tools and components that were left over from the EB110's production to produce a new car, and that is exactly what this is. So in effect, the Edonis is kind of like the EB110 Mark II, which in itself is very cool. They took that same essential 3.5 litre quad-turbo V12 unit that the EB110 used to have, and they tuned it up even higher. 720 horsepower. The 0 to 60 is actually not quite as quick as some other supercars. Even in the game, it's about 4 seconds to 60. But I actually really like the way this car accelerates. It reminds me in a funny way of a turbine, because it's a little bit slow off the line, but it just relentlessly builds up to actually one of the highest top speeds of an unknown supercar. You'll often see automotive magazines and websites and forums throwing around the term the fastest car you've never heard of. It's a title that you'll see a lot. This really is one of those. It is genuinely one of the quickest cars that many people have never heard of, because 226 in the game, I believe it was even quicker in real life, something like 227, maybe even 229. That legitimately is one of the quickest supercars around, especially at the time, but it still didn't get the same kind of press. And I think that's a shame, because it's an absolute beast. Now, the price tag in the game is 580,000 credits. It is in the A class, mostly due to that top speed, because let's be honest, the acceleration is more like a B category vehicle, really. Overall, though, it's fantastic, and I love how much respect they give to the car. Now, one of the key differences between the Edonis and the EB110 is that it's not all-wheel drive. It's a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive car, much more conventional, in fact, for a supercar, and although that could easily be a disadvantage, it actually works to its favour. It's very nimble, it actually has really, really good handling in Test Drive Unlimited, it's very smooth, it's actually far less twitchy than a lot of the other cars that have that kind of top speed and that kind of power, and I love that about it. The turbo lag actually works to its advantage, really, because the fact that it takes that little bit longer to spool up out of corners means that it actually doesn't wheel spin out of corners anywhere near as much as like a Saleen S7 or a Koenigsegg. Now, it's not quite as quick as those, of course, for acceleration in particular, but the performance is still more than capable enough to win plenty of events. And although I'm not sure if I can still upgrade this car or not, I haven't actually tried, I do recall that back in the day you could upgrade this car in the game, and I can't remember what the top speed was, but I believe it was up around Koenigsegg territory. In terms of pricing, it's definitely competitive. It's not the cheapest thing around, of course, but it's a good, 200 grand or so, not far off, cheaper than the Cadillac Cian. That's pretty good. The Cadillac is quicker, but still 200 grand is a big difference, and that's a similar kind of price, a little bit more than a Koenigsegg CC8S, a little bit less than the CCR. It's a lot cheaper, for instance, than something like a McLaren F1. So I would definitely say that the pricing is pretty competitive, to say nothing else. Now, the interesting thing about the Edonis, and you could argue this about real life as well, is that it's more of what I would classify as like a spiker level supercar. The visuals and the style and the design definitely aren't for everyone. It's kind of a Marmite car, as I would call it. You either love it or you hate it. But at the same time, it offers similar, if not superior, performance to a lot of its rivals, certainly in the case of the Edonis. But at the same time, it's the more oddball choice. It's kind of like Spiker, it's like Panos, those brands which are a little bit more oddball. To me, that is exactly what the Edonis caters to, and that's probably one of the reasons why I love it so much, because I've always loved the underdogs, those crazy, wacky little, almost unsung hero kind of machines that we talk about on the channel. And interestingly, there actually is a potential resurgence of the Edonis happening, I believe, at the moment. There's a company who I think bought the rights to producing them or something like that. It has a new name now, and it looks slightly different. I must admit, I'm not a fan of the new design, but I do think it's very cool that they want to continue the kind of unsung legend that the Edonis is. It is a fantastic car in the game, though, and I'm so happy to have it back and be able to drive it again. There were some outstandingly good DLC cars and bikes in Test Drive 1, and it's so cool to be able to feature them again on the channel. As many of you know, I love going back to older games like Gran Turismo 2, Forza 1, Test Drive Unlimited 1, Project Gotham, 1, 2, 3 and 4, to feature exactly vehicles like this. These forgotten gems that many of us still have fond memories of. But overall, that's it for this showcase. Of course, stick around on the channel for more, and if you love looking down memory lane, especially within Test Drive Unlimited, I'd stick around, because I'm going to be featuring pretty much all of those DLC vehicles, from the Cadillac Cian to this one, to the Holden Effigy, the Mercedes CLK GTR. There really were some awesome ones. It's just kind of sad that I can't get the Cadillac 16 back. I would have loved that, but there you go. Ultimately, that's it for this vid. Of course, I will see you guys next time, but for now, as always, thanks for watching.